And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me is my good brother here in the temple, the man behind the adventures with me every month, and whom him and I recently recovered from finally understanding what the hell Vlad Love is. Good brother Monarch.
Mamoru Oshii. He has a weird side a lot of people don't realize yet. But one day they may.
Yeah. So, last week we delved a little bit into some of the core mechanics of, and not the core mechanics, the character creation end of things when it comes to Megalos. One of the things that was brought up in that is classes and callings. And this is something that we're going to be dedicating the next few weeks, because I feel like the material that's within this section is not one that that we can just do in a one-off or as part of character creation as a whole. Much like a lot of times when we've covered games that use some sort of class system. Essentially, the class part of things needs to be in its own subject.
Especially since each class appears to have some unique rules associated with it.
Mm-hmm.
What those are, we'll find out, but each class essentially has 3 callings. So the subtype or archetype,
yeah,
effectively.
And remember, there's also the fact that each one has sets of powers available to it. Each one has 2 of them. The parts of the class is things like the overview, the Aether Current, which is going to be how it does its combat loop. Rules for powers, special rules, advancement chart, and talent list. And the calling, it's overview, the base stats, the bonus ability, and the power lists. And the first of these that we're going to be covering is Invokers. Invokers could be thought as one of the primary casty boys. But because of the fact that it often talks about them being holy folk and priests, that is something to consider. Invokers have 3 callings: Astromancers, Chanters, and Raconteurs. And I do like that Raconteurs are referred to as leaning into necromancy, since when I wrote about the Necromancer in my own system, I had put an aside which had to get cut, but it's going to be coming back in a different form, making it clear that Necromancers don't necessarily have to be evil. I know that might seem obvious, but we've had generations of storytelling that have Necromancers as some form of villain. Keep in mind, Necromancy was originally just a form of divination associated with the dead. So, with that in mind, we first go into the Invoker rules, where it says the Invoker class has a different sort of set of systems for interacting with their powers than the Witch and Throne classes, which are slightly more similar to one another. Where Witches have flexible repertoires of sorcery effects and Thrones string together combos of attacks, Invokers draw their power from an invocation, of which they can only have 1 active at a time. Having an active invocation is called hosting it. Each invocation possesses a suite of powers that the Invoker can make use of while hosting it. Using the powers of an invocation requires the Invoker to pay seals, which are the Invoker's Aether Current mechanic. Invokers may only host 1 invocation at a time, and if they ever run out of seals while hosting an invocation, that invocation is lost. In order to host a new invocation, the Invoker must spend a major action, which prompts them to roll all of their AC dice again to generate new seals. Then we have the thing with Aether Current seals. And I'll let you take that part.
So at the beginning of a combat encounter, and any time an Invoker uses an invocation after the start of an encounter, they roll all of their Aether Current dice, usually 46s. Even-numbered results become Astral Seals, while odd-numbered results become Umbral Seals. In order to use the powers made available to you by hosting an invocation, the Invoker must spend one or the other type of seal. Once all of their seals have been spent, the Invoker immediately stops hosting their current invocation after resolving the action on which their last seal was spent. Each invocation requires a major action in order to host, but at the beginning of a combat encounter, the Invoker can host an invocation they know is a free action on their first turn. Invokers can wait to see the result of their Aether Current die rolls before picking an invocation to host at the start of an encounter. It's possible that if you end up with more Umbral or more Astral Seals, you might prefer one or another invocation.
Yep.
Simple enough. Let's see, then we get Arcanum powers.
Mm-hmm.
Each invocation has a potent Arcanum power which costs 2 seals of any type. You cannot use an invocation's Arcanum power unless you have chosen to deepen your connection with the invocation. Invokers begin play with 1 Arcanum unlocked, but must deepen their connection with other invocations in order to ones. Once an invocation's Arcanum power has been used, it cannot be used again until after your next short or long rest.
And when it comes
Getting new in...
Yep,
Oh.
I'll take over. When it comes to getting new invocations in Arcana, Invokers start out at level 0 with 2 invocations of their choice and 1 Arcanum from one of those 2 invocations. They learn a new one at level 2, and again at every even level after that. Invokers learn to deepen their connections with their existing invocations to unlock new Arcanum powers as well. They begin at level 0 with access to 1 Arcanum power and learn additional ones at levels 1, 4, 7, and 10. Just as other characters can retrain their chosen powers and talents, Invokers can perform rituals to unbind invocations from their souls and forge pacts or bonds with new ones. So when it comes to Invoker relevant rules, we have Area of Effect, Auto Hit, Cleanse, which removes negative status effects, Dispel, which removes positive status effects, Heal, self-explanatory, and Invocation, which we already mentioned. Though I should note the way that the splash image in the background is set up makes Invocation here really hard to read.
Yeah, I wish they just kept the white background with black text.
Mm-hmm.
It's not pretty to look at.
Yeah.
The image itself is kind of cool looking, but...
Yeah, and Power Terrain, which is a special terrain that behaves in a specific way explained by the power that created it. And Raise, which removes the KO condition. And then we have the advancement table. You can kind of see the bonus HP, the invocations that they get, the arcana that they get, the talents, and artifact slots. Levels 3 and 9 are referred to as the quiet levels, but at those levels you can advance 1 skill of your choice, adding +1 die to those levels. Many talents also become more powerful on these levels. Lastly, at these levels you gain +2 bonus HP instead of +1. You can also advance 1 power that you know, either your special minor action power or a power belonging to an invocation that you possess. Each power may be advanced as many times as the power has advancement options. Powers presented in this book have 2 advancement options each. And then right after that, we go into talents. It's clear that
I am going to make
talents
a note real quick.
Mhm.
I hate having to say 0th level. Just start it first.
Yeah.
Don't make me say 0. It doesn't roll off the tongue nicely. I've seen no thematic reason why you would want to call it that. Just call it first.
Mm-hmm. I guess they wanted it to end at 10, but if that's the case, again, just start it first. But with that said, we get to the talents. I think it's clear looking at this that talents are the equivalent of feats for this system. It's just that each of them are class specific.
We'll say a good 2.5 pages of these.
Mhm.
It seems like a good number.
Yeah.
Some of these are limited to your calling. For example, choir benediction, chanter only.
Mm-hmm.
And just to get an idea of what some of these or how some of these are going to work, let's just read that one. When I use my chant of Eld minor action while hosting a speaker, the speaker echoes the chant. Increase barrier gained by +1 and the range to 1. At levels 3 and again at 9, the heal effect is also improved by +1. So that's about how these feats all seem to work.
Mm-hmm.
Or talents, I should say.
Yeah. Though there isn't any feat chain equivalent to feat chains or feat tax, so we have that in our favor. And
I'd like this to be organized a bit nicer. Like any invoker, keep all of those together, I'd say. Then do the Raconteur only ones rather than Chanter, Invoker, Raconteur only, any Invoker, Astronomer, Chanter only.
Yeah.
I'd like it to be a little better organized than this.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not so many that it's really that big of an issue.
Yeah.
Just a minor gripe.
But then we get to the first calling, which is Astromancer. And looking at that art, yes, this is a JoJo reference.
Yeah. Alright, so Astromancers are occult mages who utilize ancient taboo rituals to call upon false divinities formed by the interaction between mortal minds and astral radiance. The Astromancer's art is outlawed in many jurisdictions, as many people fear the consequences of drawing the gaze of the stars. Some religions see the Eidolons as false gods or demons, and so the Astromancer is often cast as an arch heretic.
So their role is Striker. They gain +4 damage from being set up, empowered, or when exploiting the exposed status. This bonus becomes +2 for AoE and multi-target attacks. But they can only use light or medium armor. Base HP is 24. Base defenses is 8 for dodge and 8 for ward. Plus of course your bonus from your outfit. Base damage is 6. This is plus your weapons damage bonus to find your total core damage. Recovery is 4. You have maximum 4 recovery. Recovery base is 1/4 your max HP rounded up. Then the bonus power, at level 0 you gain the Cosmic Siphon minor power. You may choose to advance it instead of taking a normal power advance whenever you receive one. Calling bonus abilities do not count against your normal maximum number of powers or talents. So Cosmic Siphon's a minor action attack, targets one foe in range 1. Test is weapon dice versus ward. Hit is core umbral damage. If this power injures or defeats a foe while hosting an invocation, you regain and spend, and roll one spent Aether Current die. If you regain a AC die from this power, you also heal, equal to your recovery base. That's one advance. Or another advance is AC die generated by this power generate a seal of your choice. Something I will
I'm
note,
going to point.
You're probably gonna point out the whole I and my when it comes to reading out the effects.
It has been driving me fucking crazy. I absolutely hate this choice, especially since every other part of this book refers to it as you. But when you get to these ability descriptions, it's referring to it as I, as in the person casting it. So, you, the player. Oh my god, this is driving me crazy.
It's definitely playing ball with the opposite hand.
You'll have noticed Mildred here has been kind of correcting it. I say in quotes as he's been reading. I'm wondering though if you're just doing what I was kind of doing when reading in my head, because naturally not saying I but you.
Mm-hmm.
But my brain and eyes are like at odds with each other reading these.
Yeah. But then we get to the Eidolon invocations for Astromancer. You pick 2 invocations. You only get the Arcanum power from one of them. And I'll just use Ajmul's Sign of Lightning as an example. So you have the Astral power, which is Brilliant Scourge. It's a minor action, costs 1 Astral Seal, targets 1 foe in range 3. Check is Weapon Dice versus Ward. It is half of core damage, astral damage, and wounded. Damage from this wounded status is 4 or +2 if added as a stack. And the 2 advances are increased damage to core damage instead of half core damage, or gain the AoE tag, target becomes target AoE 2 in range 3. The Umbral power is Levin Flash. Costs 1 Umbral Seal. Targets 1 foe in range 3. Test is Weapon Dice versus Ward. The hit is core damage +1 Umbral damage, and has the effect of up to 3 foes in the same zone as the target suffer 2 piercing damage. The first advance is increase the main target's damage to core damage +2 and secondary damage to 3. Or, second advance, you can use this power as a major action and increase the cost to 2 Umbral Seals to repeat its effect to a different target in range. And the Arcanum power is Tyranny of the Storm. It's a major action attack with an auto hit. Costs 2 seals and you lose the invocation. Target all foes in the encounter. Targets suffer 5 piercing damage and are wounded. And targets that are already wounded suffer +3 damage. An advance is increase the damage by +2. The other advance is if at least 2 foes are defeated by this power, regain 1 spent AC die. So when it comes to Eidolon invocations, I know I made the JoJo joke, but comparing them to summons wouldn't be too far off.
Yeah.
But it does end up showing one thing, and that's... Originally, I thought that when it came to maintaining an invocation, you had to spend AC. It seems that you don't. It's just a stance that is granting you a set of powers. And you can... When using the Arcanum power, you can burn it. So because
that does appear to be the case.
So because of this, you're expected to have multiple invocations as you develop, and each one of them is clearly based on a different element. But it seems that's the main approach if you're picking if you're picking this calling, it's less about developing individual powers and more about developing different stances, essentially. And because of the whole each invocation has an astral power that uses astral seals and an umbral power that uses umbral seals. And the Arcanum always uses 2 seals. So since it just says 2 seals, it could be 2 from either side.
Yeah. Depending on however you happen to roll up your seals.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
I don't see anything that indicates that when you use an Arcanum power, you completely drop that invocation for the rest. So I think one of the things that I'm curious about is how locked in you have to be when it comes to invocations. But we'll probably get to that later. But then we have the second calling, Chanter.
So, chanters intone otherworldly hymns that act as keys in the locks of their divine seals, turning to release the energy within. They summon the angelic speakers, entities from an unknown higher emanation who are believed to serve as messengers. Right? What is known with certainty is that speakers willingly treat with mortals that they wish to serve as our guides, and that they regard us as children. The specific form speakers take vary wildly, but always include a pair of large feathers. The chanter role support. Nicole Healer. Chanters can only use light armor. Support callings can spend 1 recovery to heal RB to themselves or 1 ally in range. Limit of 1 per round. Base HP 28. Base defenses 7 dodge, 9 ward. 4 base damage. Recovery 8. Is a support character, you have a maximum recovery. Recovery base, many healing effects restore HP related to your RB. Your RB is equal to 1/4 of your maximum HP to round it up. Start with chanters have 7. And their chanter calling... Excuse me. The chanter calling bonus power. Chant of Eld minor power. You may choose this... Oh yeah, it's like the other one. You can choose the advanced instead of one of your others.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's going to be the case with the next calling as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this one's a minor action. Target AoE, 3 allies in range 0. AoE 3. Does that mean 3 allies, or is that the range? I believe that would be the range.
Yeah.
But no, in range 0.
So this is essentially a close burst.
Yeah. So AoE 3 allies in range 0, is that how I'm supposed to be reading that?
Yeah. Three ranges. Range 0 is how far away the epicenter can be. The AoE, the number 3 in this case is all allies up to 3 zones away from you.
Okay. Had a bit of a brain fart there with how to read that. But yeah, targets heal 3, gain a barrier. If you want to use this power outside of a combat encounter, you must spend 1 recovery to do so. The advanced barrier effect increased by 2, or trade out allied targets for foes in range, inflicting 3 piercing damage instead of granting buried. And then, like with the previous one, we have just a full set of these.
Yep.
Pick 2 invocations to the following pages. You only get the Arcanum power. 1.
And it pretty much works like we saw before. Astral Power, Umbral Power, Arcanum.
It's just this time we're dealing with more support style abilities rather than the more offensive ones.
Mm-hmm. So let's see, we have Blade Herald, Lawgiver, Reaper of Souls, River Speaker, Storm Speaker, Word Bearer. I think there was a missed opportunity to use the titles of Choirs of Angels for this kind of thing, especially since, even though they don't outright say it, but each of these speakers having feathered wings like that, they're angels in all but name.
Yeah. But then we move on to the last one, the Raconteur.
Mm-hmm. Raconteurs are necromancers, folk magicians, storytelling bards, and possessed spirit warriors. They protect the histories and stories of their people, collect knowledge of the past, and serve as the link between the dead and the living. They tap into the immortal memory of the dead and the River of Souls, the cosmal memory, to dredge up and give life to legends and myths from across time. Their memory powers allow them to embody legends by channeling those forces, essentially summoning a being into themselves, where other invokers summon beings into the world. Raconteur's magic is often called mythomancy or story magic. They're chevals in voodoo. With a healthy mix of what Bard was in 4th edition, where they were weaponized storytelling. But okay, here's where things are interesting. Their role is tank. They're a heavy fighter mage. Tank callings can affect taunted on one foe in range 1 once per turn. Raconteurs can only use medium or heavy armor. Base HP is 32 plus your bonus HP. Base defenses is 10 dodge and 10 ward. Base damage is 4 plus your weapons damage bonus. Recovery is 4. Recovery base is, as with the others, 1/4 your maximum. To start with, you have 8. I will note with the whole to start with, I find it a bit odd to make that distinction, because if it's 1/4 your maximum, then it's going to be base plus your bonus HP from leveler talents. I think the reason it's said that way is because you don't get bonus HP at level 0. But again, I have to wonder the purpose of level 0. But then we have the bonus power, which is called Undertow. It's a minor action with an attack and AoE tag. Targets AoE 2 foes in range 1. Test is weapon dice versus ward. Hit is half of core damage. Effect, targets are pulled 1 and taunted. The first advance, you can increase the damage by +2, or you can choose to teleport yourself adjacent to the target instead of pulling them to you. That's an interesting setup for a tank. But then they have...
I mean, I'm alright with it.
Then they have their invocations, known as the Cosmal Memories. I think the first one we'll go with is... I think the one we'll use as an example is the Judge. So their Astral is Balance of Power. It costs 1 Astral Seal. Targets 1 foe in range 0. Test is weapon dice versus dodge. It is core damage. And if you have more total HP, so HP plus armor HP, than the target before resolving the attack, you gain advantage on the attack and +1 damage. If the target the target is injured, they suffer +2 damage. Or the other advanced target. Okay, why is there the ampersand there? Target and all foes in range 0 suffer taunted. Alright, I understand why the ampersand is there, but I feel like that could have been worded better.
Yeah.
Oh. The Umbral power is Tip the Scales. Costs 1 Umbral Seal, targets 1 foe in range 0. The test is Weapon Dice versus Dodge. Hit is half core damage and Umbral damage, and the target is marked until the start of your next turn. And mark basically means allies who attack the target count as being set up before the attack. So this setup was something that we saw earlier with the first calling in this, and it basically means that marked targets are procced for strikers to do more against them, which is definitely what you'd expect of a tank. Going with the golden triangle. But the first advance is you can apply Afraid to all foes in range other than the main target, or you can use the power as a major action and increase the cost to 2 Umbral Seals to repeat the effect on a different target in range. Or you have and when it comes to the Arcanum power, known as the Judge's Verdict, it costs 2 seals, you lose the invocation, targets 1 foe in range 3, does core damage plus 5 physical damage. The target is teleported adjacent to you and stunned. First advance is all foes in the starting zone suffer Afraid. The other advance is if the target is injured or defeated by this attack, you gain regen. So, what we effectively have with the Raconteur is a control tank. They're all about forced movement, essentially. Forced movement and a bit of proc, but the Judge is very much on the forced movement end of things. Which is certainly an interesting way to do a tank. The way a lot of people see tank is take a hit, can dish out a hit, but is not very mobile, because they're meant to be taking hits and force the enemy into targeting them. There is certainly that with the Raconteur, but it's got its own thing as well.
Yeah. It's an interesting way to deal with what a tank's role is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
Draw aggro to you and force people to have to pay attention to what you're doing for one reason or another.
Mm-hmm. I don't think we covered status effects last week.
We did not. That has me asking some questions.
I think
we didn't go over each individual powers, obviously. But there's something odd I kind of noticed. Like, one of them, the base power will apply the 3, but one of the advances is plus 3 to damage, where the one we read over just now is the advance is plus 2 to damage against injured. Like, is applying feared with that other thing enough to kind of make up with how obviously better the advance of a different power is?
I think something else to note is we don't have a full understanding about the size of the combat map, because it's definitely applying grid combat. And let's see. So statuses and conditions, which is in chapter 3. So it's possible we did cover it. It's just something that we skimmed. And as an aside, this is why it's important to have a table of it's not a table of contents, a bookmark set up in your PDF. So, Afraid, you inflict -3 damage against the creature that inflicted this condition. Your highest die roll in any attack involving weapon dice is reduced by -3 when the source of the status is included as one of the targets. Exposed, the next damaging attack to hit you inflicts +3 damage, or +4 if it was a striker. if the attack was perpetuated by a striker, I should say. And there is.
I'll note, I went back to the index to kind of check. It is not that great of an index. Like, I can't just find the status effect specifically on here, but there's the conditions that it lists all the pages where the conditions are. So even as like a hardcover book, where you can't have the bookmarks, this is not an ideal index. A lot of the formatting here could have been handled much better.
I find it funny that there was that one person who got on me about formatting in my own work, but I will note I do appreciate that the more offensive characters have less recoveries. Like tanks and strikers have four recovery and supports have 8. So it kind of hammers home the support is meant to be using their recoveries to help other people. The tank and striker ones are meant to help them die less.
I think we're seeing a consistent theme here with how we're looking at what, like, half of the stuff we're seeing is good. The other half seems kind of frustrating.
And I feel like that's going to be a theme throughout. But one thing I want to try and figure out when it comes to combat is what is intended by the ranges. All right, so like range 0 is basically same square, and this is going to create a bit of a confusion, because a lot of people, when they think of the concept of zones, they're not going to be thinking of the idea of multiple characters in one square, in one zone. I think maybe I brought up Wild Arms 5 when it comes to this sort of thing. But a lot of people, when they see combat in squares in TTRPGs, they're going to be thinking of grid combat, where it's 1 unit per zone. And that's not necessarily what this is doing. I do realize that there are a few example spreads in the encounter section in regards to things like zone maps, but I really think a full encounter look should have been considered. Because I think when people are thinking of something like Zone 0, they're thinking of, oh, this targets myself. It's like, no, it's equivalent to what would be an adjacent target in other RPGs. And suddenly I feel vindicated for the fact that I didn't even use any sort of grid combat or zone combat. I used a row system. But when it comes to the Invoker, maybe it's just me, but I feel like the Invoker should not have been the first calling that is shown.
I don't know if I'd want to agree with that yet, just because we haven't seen the others yet.
Well, it talks about it having a different setup than the other two. That's the reason why I think maybe it should have been a bit later on. I'm thinking of how 13th Age organizes their classes not by not alphabetically, but by degree of complexity.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it. Start with the simple, easiest one to understand to help set a base work.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's going to be the case here yet or not. But maybe they're all unique enough to where it might not matter too much.
Yeah.
Or maybe this was just a bad choice to start with. It could be.
But looking at the invocations, I think one of the things I was trying to figure out is, after you lose an invocation by using Arcanum, how would you get it back? It is possible I may have skimmed it. You can host an invocation as a free action. And
I swear we covered that, but it slipped in my mind too. I think once you lose one, it's one of your actions will bring it back.
So you can host one invocation at a time, and if you run out of seals while hosting an invocation, you lose it. And it is a major action. I think that did slip our mind. Which, given that, it does kind of mean that invokers are a bit restricted in terms of their kit. Because if they can only host one invocation, that means they only have 2 powers at their disposal.
Technically 3 if it's the one they picked that one for, but that is something I'm kind of a little worried about, is how many options are you really going to have once combat starts rolling? You pick your invocation at the start, which I do remember it saying you roll the dice first to see what seals you end up with.
Yeah.
And then you can pick based off of that, but if you're picking based off that and that roll is significant enough, your actions for the turn are basically going to be, well, for the next few turns, are going to be determined by what you rolled on those dice.
Yeah. And when it comes to now, each of the astral and umbral powers are minor actions. So they cost 1 AP, whereas the Arcanum is a major action. And obviously the AP that you get is going to be determined by which phase you're in. You know, if you decide to take a fast turn, you get 2. If you take a slow turn, you get 3. So and I didn't see anything about only being able to use it once. So you can, but even with that, you're only
feels so restricted.
You're only getting 2 actions. Even if you can mess around with those actions with advances, that's still only 2 potential actions aside from the basic actions, you know, strikes, grapples, power up, which, as an aside, the Invoker version of power up has them roll up to 2 AC dice and add them to the pool, which is a major action for them.
Here's the thing. I like the ideas on these classes. I think the powers themselves are somewhat range from alright to pretty interesting. But once combat's actually rolling, the moment you pick that invocation, like, okay, I guess this very limited set of stuff is what I can do for a bit. I don't think I like this. Not if I'm understanding how this works properly.
Yeah. And I know one... I get that I get that invokers are meant to be somewhat analogous to summoners in Final Fantasy. But I look at the approach I took, and it's obviously... I'll get into that later, but I treated it more like you were managing a deck. And if I'm being honest, I just think that a expanded amount of powers is something that should be considered, because I have a feeling that the other classes we're going to be covering have, in fact, just looking at the sample characters that we skimmed, they have a much wider pool. And
I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of funny. Since this is kind of the wizard type class, that's kind of the opposite of how it usually is.
Yeah. I mean, at most you have 4, but practically speaking, you're going to have 3. The calling action and the astral and umbral power from your invocation. And even if you get more invocations as you level up,
you're limited in the one you've selected until you switch out.
Mm-hmm. And from what I saw with talents, there's not much in the way of talents that are giving you extra actions. Talents are kind of what feats were back and forth, where they were enhancements to your kit rather than directly adding to it.
Even with extra actions, you still got only the 3 or 4 abilities at any given moment.
Mm-hmm. And
so additional actions, I don't think really would fix my issue with this.
I think the bigger issue is just it's a bottleneck.
And it feels like a really, really small bottleneck. Mm-hmm.
And while the other sample characters, for instance, weren't swimming in actions either, I have a feeling they're not going to be as restrictive.
Yeah, once you say you're not going to have to pick Invocation Warrior, and I get, regardless of what else I've selected on this character.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you had more than just the 1 Astral and Umbra on each, this wouldn't be so bad. Give me 2 Astral and Umbrals. Or maybe some other just universal things you can pick, so you kind of have more options regardless of the invocation.
Now, I get not wanting to have a sprawling action list, but that pendulum swings both ways.
Yeah, this doesn't feel like it'd be fun getting locked into one of these for a set number of rounds, depending on how quick you're blowing through an invocation.
Especially since your pool of powers is going to be determined by those AC dice. So,
you may not even be able to pick the one you want anyway, depending how you roll.
It's very clear that the way that the game wants people to use the power setup is using a mixture of astral and umbral, or having both at your disposal in some form. But
God, imagine the bad roll where you end up with only Astral or only Umbral Witch. It is a very real possibility to happen on 4d4 rolling evens or odds. How limiting are you going to feel once it hits your turn? It's like, well, I guess I got an Umbral power.
But,
And God.
Yeah. And I don't mean to keep bragging on this kind of thing, but it's just I could see a bit of frustration when it comes to this.
It's not even like a fun gamble. Like, a fun kind of gamble has you a really good and interesting payoff at the risk of something bad happening. In this case, you roll bad, it makes it painful to play. I don't even care if you only want that Umbral power, if that's basically now your only option. But what happens if you get the good roll? Is it that great comparatively?
Remember, you've played your fair share of Magic the Gathering as much as I have, yes?
Long time ago, but yes, I played some.
Then you're no doubt familiar with these two terms: mana screwed and mana flooded.
And those are your only real options here. There's no real good way to roll those dice that isn't going to make this feel restricted. It's just, how fucked are you?
Yeah, obviously there's some really nice stuff with the individual powers, but it's the fact that you're locked into those two and essentially at the mercy of the Aether Current dice. So that's a bit of an issue. But I think overall there's ideas we like with the Invoker, but it is very bottlenecked in terms of what you can do. Almost railroaded. Because of the way channeling Arcanum works. But the next time that we cover Megalos, we'll be going into the Throne, which very much feels like a comboist martial character. In some regards, I think it leans a little bit into what would be a monk in a more traditional game. However, that isn't what we're going to be doing directly next week. Next week, we're going to be going over the system overview for the upcoming Souls-like TTRPG, Bitter Chalice. Which, full disclosure, I did interview the developer of Bitter Chalice a while back, because it's not my first rodeo with him. And I do think that unlike Dark Souls 5e, Bitter Chalice has a much better understanding of what it means to be a Souls-like TTRPG. And you'll hopefully see that come next week. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra, I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody!